to me, it just gets tricky. One, if you're not playing well. Two, if your team's not doing well. Or three, if you're just not even playing, but you're still doing your podcast. So we live in a new time and a new era, which, I'm not a part of from being a professional athlete right now. But I've seen a lot of the talking and people like, oh, so you can do a pod, but you can't play type stuff. So it just, it kind of gets gray. And then, and I'm not even talking about anybody current, but we used to have some wild ass locker room talk. Does that talk leave the locker room now and slide onto a pod? So it's just, kind of the sacred areas are somewhat gone because, the plane, the bus rides, the locker rooms used to be where we talk the most crazy and tell the most crazy stories. And now you're hearing a lot, although it's entertaining for people to hear these stories, you're hearing a lot of come out that probably shouldn't come out.
All right, folks, we've got a real one joining us today. He's an NBA champion who brought intensity to every game, and now he's making waves off the court as the co-host of the hit podcast, All the Smoke. Y'all join us in welcoming the one and only Matt Barnes. What's up, cousin?
Hey, what up, y'all, man? Thank you for having me.
Man, we appreciate you being here.
No doubt,
no
doubt.
Man, out the gate, I want to ask you about something that I know is near and dear to your heart. I got to see highlights of Chatsworth versus Crespi High School just last week. Man, what a matchup. You had Elijah Arenas going against Peyton White and your sons, the twins. Mm-hmm. When you're sitting there and you watching high-level high school basketball like that, right? Yeah. Do you get an inkling that this generation is just far superior than any generation that came prior as far as skill is concerned?
Skill level, absolutely. And it's dope for me. Obviously, Elijah and the twins are cousins. And I remember, changing Elijah's diapers. You know what I mean? That's how long I've been around Elijah now. And he's one of the top kids in the country. So to be able to see, these guys go at it at a high school level is really special. I think the skill level with this generation is super high. I think what this generation lacks, and this is not a blanket statement, but I think more times than not, I think they lack the basketball IQ. I think this generation has grown up with the ball in their hands and they're great at one-on-one and they work out with their trainers all day, every day, but they just don't play enough pickup basketball. So when you see kids without the ball, they're normally just standing there. They're not cutting, they're not screening, they're not flaring, they're not doing all the other things that you need at that next level. So that's one thing I really try, and I know Gilbert does for Elijah as well. Preach to our kids is just the mental side and understanding the complete game and understanding when you don't have the ball, you can be just as effective as you are with the ball with movement.
How hard is it for you, Matt, to sit and watch the game and not try to coach your boys?
No, I mean, I coach them in the summer, and I trust Derek to coach them during the regular season. Derek's their stepdad, and he's the coach of their high school team. So there will be times during end of quarters or at halftime, I'll say things to them. But for the most part, I like to be able to sit back and just see them figure things out and apply things that we worked on in the off season or apply things that we worked on while training and see how that translates into real games.
There's a lot being said right now about the lack of quality basketball being played, not just at high school, but on the NBA level as well. There's way too, in my estimation, there's way too many 3-point shots. We lost a lot about the nuance of the game, right? How do you feel about the game currently, and is there anything the league can do to improve the product on the floor?
That's a tough question. We talked about this the other day, and I think the NBA lacks storylines. You used to be able to grow with players starting, into their high school career through college and into the league. But now there's just a ton of young players coming from everywhere, and no one knows them. The league is so young now. I remember I'm dating myself, but I came back in the league in 2002. And when I came in the league, there were vets that were 38, 39, 40. Whether they contributed on the court was irrelevant because they helped so much bridge gaps for younger players, communications between coaches. So now it's just it's really the young leading the young in this game. And I think you hit on it. Steph Curry revolutionized the game and Clay revolutionized the game with their ability to shoot. But everybody is not Steph and Clay. And I think everyone thinks they are Steph and Clay, and that trickles down all the way to grassroots. So, I mean, you're seeing the Boston Celtics shoot 53s on average, which is insane to me. So
please stop it.
Yeah, the style of play has really gotten nasty. We've got away from really just, man movement, ball movement, running certain sets and executing to just, running down the court and firing threes. To me, it's just a glorified pickup game. And I just think that's really turned off, audiences. The NBA viewership is down 30% this season. And, some of it is due to the style of play. I think some of it is due to you have to get every app to find games now. And also, I just think, some of these guys are making so much money and then not playing that turns off your consumer. Your fans that want to come out and watch, and expensive as it is to take a family of 4 or 5 to a game, and you're paying all this money, and then there's a good chance that the star might not even play. So I just think some of the actions have turned off the common fan, but I just think overall it's definitely the style of play. Again, Steph's ability to shoot has won that team 4 championships, but everyone that's trying to mimic, and the NBA is a mimic and copycat league, don't shoot like him.
And we know that the NBA is trying to do everything possible to get that viewership back. They have the in-season tournament. They're partnering with FIBA. What do you feel like they could do to get people watching basketball again?
It's tough. I think the main thing is the style of play and the quality of play, and then obviously getting the stars to actually play throughout the season, which is hard. I mean, I came in the league, and I hate to sound like one of these old guys talking, but when I came in the league, it was a badge of honor to try to play all 82 games. You wanted to try to play as many games as possible. Only time I really sat out is when I was suspended. You want to try to play all games possible, and then you got to get ready for that second season, which is the playoffs, is when you really turn up. But now you're getting star players that are playing 45, 55 games out of an 82-game season, and then when they get to the playoffs, they still end up getting hurt. So I just don't think this generation drinks enough milk. We used to drink that vitamin D cow milk back in the day, and
I said that.
Hey, these kids don't be drinking that vitamin D, man.
Yo, it's the almond milk. The almond milk is making the kids soft,
making these kids too soft, man. It's crazy.
Yo, speaking of kids, right? AJ DeBenster just signed with BYU for a reported $5 to $7 million. Matt, at 18, would you have been able to be a college student and not get any cheeks for a full year?
What?
If you're giving me that kind of money, I would try my hardest not to. But college is when you crack. That's the first time you're not in your parents' house and girls are walking around and you're on the basketball. I mean, at UCLA, it was nuts because my freshman year at UCLA was the NBA lockout, so we were one of the biggest shows in town. So I couldn't imagine that my freshman year not being able to wiggle the way I wiggled. But for 5 to 7,
wiggle is crazy.
5 to $7 million, man, I would have thought about it. But yeah. I was talking to some of my college homies, and I remember when we'd get our Pell Grants, 25, 3,500. You couldn't tell it.
You was up. You was lit.
But can you imagine having even $1 million, $500,000, $250,000? I couldn't imagine having that kind of money with no real guidance. And I'm all for guys making money. I just think there needs to be guidance. But I do feel like AJ is one of those guys that sees the bigger picture and understands that this is just a pit stop, and he's going to put in his work and do what he has to do and be the number one pick. But I think NIL as a whole and the collective as a whole, it's great, but it's also the wild, wild west. I always think players should be paid because these schools are making so much money, but I don't feel like it comes with any guidance, any structure. And then also, do you take your foot off the gas if you're making 200, 300, 2 million, 3 million? Like, we had to grind to get that. These kids are getting it before the real grind even starts. So to me, how do you stay motivated and disciplined? So I hope that some of these kids have strong circles around them and parents that can advise them and kind of guide them. But that's hard. We've all been that 18, 19, 20 where no one could really tell it. Man. Especially if you got more money than your parents. What is my mom and dad really going to tell me?
What is your broke ass finna tell me, Dad? What you going to say to me?
You asking to borrow money and still trying to give me life lessons. So it's just kind of hard, man. So I hope there's some way to figure this out. But I kind of feel with this blessing, because 99% of college athletes don't go pro. So with this blessing, it's going to help a lot of kids and their families. But I also think, and I don't want to be a hater by any means, but I think this will be a generation of busts because kids have too much too early, and then once you get to that league, no one's holding your hand, no one's telling you. You already have to have it figured out. And if it's been a cake, if it's been a skate up until the NBA, you're going to have a rude awakening when you get there.
So I want to talk about a couple of young stars who I think highly of, but I think they're at a very interesting point in their careers. Firstly, LaMelo, right? So he's having a great season right now so far, but sometimes it feels like he's just clowning out there. And I don't know if his style of play is conducive to winning at a very high level. Where does he fall in the hierarchy of point guards in the league? And do you feel like his style of play is championship caliber basketball?
First and foremost, he's one of the best point guards in the league. You know, being able to see his growth and his journey, living out here in Southern California has been incredible. One of the most skilled and probably one of the funnest players in the league to watch. But he just needs some structure. And unfortunately, time and time again, Charlotte has showed you as an organization that hasn't had that structure and that guidance. And obviously it starts at the top that really produces quality teams and players, that can follow in suit. So I think his best move is eventually getting out of there and getting to a team and an organization that demands certain things. But I feel like he's so skilled and talented that his game can adapt. But right now it's really just he's out there putting on a show every single night. And it's a beautiful show, but it doesn't really equate to much.
Yeah, for sure. And then we have Anthony Edwards, who for many was the guy they saw taking the title as the face of the league going forward. But Minnesota shot themselves in the foot with that Karl Anthony Towns trade. I feel like they set that team back 4 or 5 years at least, because now you just have Rudy Gobert. Well, you just have Rudy Gobert. So do you feel like he can still become the face of the league in a small market without having team success?
No. I definitely think those go hand in hand. I definitely think you have to win. And then, everyone kind of forgot about Ja, because before we were speaking about Ant Edwards as the face, we were speaking about Ja as the face, and he had made some off-court mistakes and decisions. But small markets are always tough to compete with large markets. That's why I've been so surprised that Giannis has stayed in Milwaukee for so long, because that's a small market, and you've been hearing rumbles about, him possibly being on the move. But, I agree. Although I really like Julius Randle and DiVincenzo, Cat is one of the most versatile bigs in the game. Although I think towards the end of his Minnesota tenure, he was just shooting way too many threes. I think he's got that hunger back in New York, where he's giving them the full package inside out.
But didn't he have to do that, though? Didn't he have to create space because of Rudy?
Yeah, I mean, get Rudy's ass out the way.
Get out the way, bro.
Get Rudy out the way. Rudy's getting 3 seconds in the key, calling for the ball, knowing goddamn well he can't do nothing with it. But it's a tough situation. I definitely, that trade didn't work out as they planned. I think obviously Cat is having an all-star caliber year in New York. So they're going to have to kind of restructure and figure out what the best move for this team is, although, and you never want to, when I'm talking tongue in cheek, when I talk about Rudy, I mean, this guy's a 4-time defensive player of the year, but also at the same time, come into the season, come playoff time, he's a defensive liability, because the game is so fast and small people, you're attacking him. And then most of the time he's sitting on the bench and you're not even getting your money's worth. So they got some pieces over there they have to figure out. But one thing I do know is Ant wants to be the face. He has the talent to be the face, but it's going to take more than just him to be the face.
Yeah. He's going to have to stop shooting as many threes, too. 11 threes a game is entirely too much. But that athleticism, I need him attacking the cup, bro.
Yeah.
This is too much settling.
He fell in love, but I mean, he's shooting at 40, 42, 43. He's shooting it at a high clip. But I do agree. I think he's been able to obviously improve his 3-point shot, and he's kind of fallen in love with that instead of. And to me, although he's knocking those down, you're letting the defense off the hook, because he is so skilled, athletic, and talented. Now
the bigs ain't getting in foul trouble, right? Yep. Now you're not getting close to the bonus earlier on in the quarter. It's a lot of things that impact the game besides you making threes. It's the nuance that we talked about earlier.
Agreed.
If you had to choose one star that could get traded before the deadline, who you choosing?
I'm an old school guy, so I would love to see Bron and Steph team up. I think we got a glance of that in the in the Olympics, and for Bron to be able to just be a facilitator and picking and choosing his spots when to score. And some people look at it like, come on, man, it's one of the greatest players. Why is he moving again? But I would just, as a fan of the game, I would love to see those two team up. But if it wasn't him, I would say, because all these other guys are really young and they're not going nowhere, I'd like to see Giannis land somewhere else. Although they just won the NBA Cup and they're starting to hit their stride. I would love to see Giannis land in a bigger market and kind of start going from there.
But Matt, we know that both of those things are not going to happen, right? I live in the Valley. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I live in Southern Cal, so Bron ain't leaving LA. We know that, and then we know that Giannis ain't getting traded from Milwaukee. But there is talks about like Brandon Ingram, Jimmy Butler. If there's one legitimate, real, possible star to be traded this season, who do you think that is, and where do they end up?
I think you mentioned two guys. I think, Kuzma is another target that can help teams. I'd like to see some of these talented players go to some of these older teams where the stars are on their way out. So I'd like to see, the Bradley Beal, as much as I love Bradley Beal, him in Phoenix hasn't necessarily worked the way they thought. So if they
No.
can get someone in for him and move him, or the Lakers and the Warriors, I would like, KD, Bron, and Steph, I want to see these guys go out with the best chance possible. So hopefully, getting a Butler, an Ingram, a Kuzma, someone of that caliber that is a second or third option, a consistent second or third option into one of those teams can definitely take these teams to a different level.
Got you, man. It feels like the NBA used to protect its own interests, right? You could say Patrick Ewing's draft freezing the lottery card, so they knew which one to pull for the New York Knicks. A guy like Zion ending up in the greatest food city in the continental U.S. just felt like a recipe for disaster out the gate, pun intended. If you're a GM, do you have faith that he can be a franchise guy at this point?
He hasn't shown that. He's shown flashes that he has the talent and the upside, but the best ability is availability, and he just hasn't been able to play more than 30 games in the past few years. And to think this is year 5 or 6 for him, it's going by so fast. One, again, I talk about the organization. Landing in an organization that has structure, guidance, and leadership is so huge, especially now because, as I mentioned earlier, teams are so young. There's not vets that are going to straighten guys out no more. It has to be the ownership and management and the coaching staff. So I say that, but then I also say a lot of responsibility falls on Zion and to be disciplined and understand that you can't be a chubby college kid no more. You're looked at as a franchise player. You have franchise talent, but you just haven't been able to give your team that side of you. So sometimes guys need a fresh start. Like you said, New Orleans may have not have been the best spot for him for several different reasons, but I still think he has some in the tank, a lot in the tank. But just his availability has been the biggest question. But he's also someone, you hear talks now that he's on, available for trade. So to see him land somewhere with some structure and some discipline and people that are going to really hold him accountable could probably, revamp his career as well.
Thick women and good food. Why would the NBA do that to that young man?
Recipe for disaster, bro. That's a recipe for disaster for anybody, but particularly him.
And where you're drafted will dictate how your career turns out. Oftentimes, it is what it is.
So obviously we're seeing players like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. They are getting attention that has been unprecedented. What do you make of this generation of WNBA talent, and why is it so dynamic and marketable?
Obviously, the way we look at athletes now has changed on how we looked at them in the past. I mean, there's just more attention. Social media has given you an inside look at people's 24/7 life. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, we were able to see the journey of Caitlin and Angel, starting, I started seeing those girls, I think they're junior or senior in high school, and then being able to follow them through college. And now you see their success in the W. So there's storylines there. You understand, you kind of get who they are and what they're about. Obviously their battles in college were legendary, and they were, to me, and I say with all due respect, I think they were bigger individual brands as the W as a whole. And that's saying a lot because there's a ton of talented women, but with those two girls in particular, they were major brands before they even came into the league. And obviously they had their hard knocks and really had to prove themselves, but really proud of both those women because they were able to establish themselves in this league, completely different styles of play, but definitely were very effective at both their styles of play. And, they took a lot of, and particularly Caitlin, because, she was hailed as the great white hope. And, she's a very humble person and really kept her head down and continued to grind. And, I just did a monologue on this the other day that she's damned if she does, damned if she doesn't. I mean, she's done pretty much everything the right way, but she continues to take from both sides when she, attributes, her success to the black players that led the way before her. She took, she just takes a lot of, so a lot comes with the responsibility that those two women have. I mean, I definitely think those two have helped grow the game, but you look at Caitlin as an individual. I mean, the business of Caitlin Clark and what she's been able to bring to this game has been huge. Yep. The eyeballs and the opportunities, and a lot of people want to discredit that, and a lot of people are quick to say, well, there was a lot of girls that were doing it before. When you look at Asia Wilson, who's a 3-time MVP and a 2-time champ, I'm not even saying that Caitlin is the best player in the W, because she's not, and I think all of us know that, but she is the vehicle that's bringing opportunity and eyeballs. And I think the sooner that this league embraces that, the better. If you look on the flip side, the NBA is trying to find who is that next group of guys that are going to carry the weight of LeBron and Steph and KD. While the WNBA has it, they continue to downplay who she is and what she's been able to do for this game and for these women individually. So again, fans of all these women, but definitely big fans of Caitlin and Angel for being able to create the lane they've created and to be able to help the rest of these women make more money and have more opportunity.
The Knuckleheads podcast always asks this question, which I find interesting, right? They ask, who was the first person to bust your ass? I'm not worried about that. I want to know the last person that bust your ass that lets you know it might be time to hang them up.
It's time to go. It was probably Devin Booker. I was with the Kings right before the Kings traded DeMarcus, and I ended up going to Golden State. But Devin Booker, and throughout my career, I've always been the guy that had to guard the best player, from Kobe, Bryant, KD, Melo, D Wade, you name them, I had to guard them. Paul Pierce, T Mac, to name a few. But hitting 37, 38, it's just like, ooh, these young moving quick and strong and efficient. I feel like I still could, although I retired. I retired at 37 after I was fortunate enough to win a ring with Golden State, and I felt like I could have still played a couple more years. I kept my body in shape. And one thing about me is I knew my role. I knew my role, and I was able to execute my role night in, night out. What took me away from the game was just my inability to see my kids. And, you go in, 15 years in this game, you sacrifice a lot, but I think the most thing you sacrifice is family, because you do have to be selfish to be able to last this long in the league. And I just knew that, the twins were growing up, and I was missing first days and plays and games and just birthdays and opportunities that I'll never be able to get back. So, when I retired with still 2 years left on my deal. So I was still paid for 2 years after I left the game because I just wanted to be more of a dad.
Yeah.
Fire.
Speaking of podcast, obviously podcasts featuring athletes are blowing up right now. What do you think it is about shows hosted by athletes or former athletes that make them so relatable and popular?
I just think, as a fan, which I am now, I want to hear from the horse's mouth. I mean, as great as the Stephen A. Smiths and the Skip Baylesses, and the list goes on, of guys that have, created their career in sports broadcasting and journalism and give great takes. These motherfuckers don't know what it's like to knock down free throws and send it to overtime, or what it's like to be in the playoffs, or what it's like to be down by 20 and get cussed out by your coach at halftime and come out and have a big third quarter. So I think fans just kind of really want to hear it from the guys who have done it at the highest level. You guys mentioned the Knuckleheads, and I think, they were maybe 6 to 8 months in this space before us. But I think when all the smoke came in this space, I think we really kicked the door open and kind of started shifting the narrative and really welcoming more people, more former athletes into this podcast space. And it's athletes and media have kind of taken over, and it's not just on the basketball side. It's heavy on the basketball side, but you're seeing it on the football side, and you're seeing it on other sides. And I just think fans want to be able to hear it from the guys who really did it. So
y'all taking all the money, bruh.
There's some guys that, there's some guys that can do it, and there's some guys that are doing it that shouldn't be doing it. Not every motherfucker deserves a mic in front of their face. But
you leave Kendrick Perkins alone. Come on, man.
You stupid. We live in a time and space, man, where anybody can speak now. And, again, with the shift, as I mentioned, you don't necessarily need these big companies no more. I was fortunate enough to be able to work for ESPN for 4 years and do some stuff with Fox, and then NBC with the Kings and do stuff with the Clippers. But with this new wave now, you don't necessarily need the big machine behind you. If you can talk your and make good points and articulate your ideas, I mean, you could be your own brand. And again, that's why I broke free from all that. And obviously with a successful podcast, we were able to launch All the Smoke Productions. So now we have a handful of shows under our company, and I'm pouring everything I have, all my resources and knowledge, into our company. So again, it was a great opportunity for me. I learned a lot because I'm someone who tries to soak up game any chance I get, but I was able to bring all that experience and knowledge to my own company now, and now we're kind of running our things and doing our things. So it's been dope.
I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but I also mean it. If y'all need any help around there, you let a brother know.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
I was going to say that we're seeing players that are still in leagues doing podcasts. That could be a little dangerous. What do you feel like your show would have been like if you and Stacks were still playing?
Oh, it would have been, I think it would have been to an advantage for us, because I think we're so misunderstood. And our careers, we caught the kind of the beginning of the social media wave. You know what I mean? I think probably 2012 or 13 is kind of when Twitter was popping and Instagram was just coming on the scene, because I came up in an era, whatever ESPN, Fox, or the newspaper said was the truth about athletes. And we really didn't have a platform to kind of speak our side. So the ability to kind of tell our side, and I think someone who's taken the most advantage of it is Draymond Green. Similar to me, where, very misunderstood from the outside looking in. You might not fuck with him, you might not agree with him, but the team loves him. The teammates and the organization understand how important he was. And I was a similar player where, you would see a couple things or see me slap someone or cuss someone out, and, oh, he's an ass, he's this, he's that. But then you ask my teammates, and, he's one of the best teammates I ever had. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So to answer your question, I think it would have been cool for us to have that platform. But at the same time, it's a slippery slope now, because you look at my brother, Paul George, who's been injured, and someone did a stat where bro had more episodes than games played. You know what I mean? So it's just like there's that slippery slope of, everyone has an opinion now, you know what I mean? And,
Yep.
and podcasts are here, and I don't think they're going anywhere, and athletes are going to continue to dive into them, whether it's season, not, or whether you're a current athlete or former athlete. But to me, it just gets tricky. One, if you're not playing good well. Two, if your team's not doing well. Or three, if you're just not even playing, but you're still doing your podcast. So we live in a new time and a new era, which, I'm not a part of from being a professional athlete right now. But I've seen a lot of this talking and people like, oh, so you can do a pod but you can't play type stuff. So it just it kind of gets gray. And then, and I'm not even talking about anybody current, but we used to have some wild ass locker room talk. Does that talk leave the locker room now and slide onto a pod? So it's just, kind of the sacred areas are somewhat gone, because, the plane, the bus rides, the locker rooms used to be where we talk the most crazy and tell the most crazy stories. And now you're hearing a lot, although it's entertaining for people to hear these stories, you're hearing a lot of come out that probably shouldn't come out.
For sure. You have one of the last and best Kobe Bryant interviews. Had you known what would end up, to be his inevitability, is there anything additional that you would have asked him, man?
Well, that was supposed to be a 2-part interview, which is crazy, because we only got like 40 minutes. He was about to go out of town, so it was a quick, and it was supposed to be a 2-part. We were going to come back and do some more, but unfortunately we weren't able to. I really just took pride in that interview because, Kobe and I have a long history, and, obviously the ball fake is what everybody knows. But, I started messing with Kobe in college when he was first with the Lakers, and he was around our campus all the time. And then, fast forward to what happened in Orlando with the ball fake, and then him recruiting me and us becoming teammates and then brothers and like really kicking it. People are like, Kobe used to want to go out with me all the time. Like we would land in different cities, and B, what you doing? I was like, bro, I'm about to go smoke real quick. And then what's up? He's like, well, let me know when you're done smoking, and we'll hit it. You know what I mean? So we would go to dinner. We would step out every once in a while. But what my goal was with that one interview was to really kind of show Kobe. Everyone knows the Black Mamba from the outside looking in, because he was someone that didn't really let a lot of people in. He would never give that side. And I remember on the bus one time, we laugh and joke, because Kobe's cool as talk back to you, could take a joke. And I asked him, I was like, yo, well, how come you don't show the world this side? He's like, nah, I can't show these motherfuckers that. So Kobe always kind of had that wall up to the world. And if you're fortunate enough to get behind that wall to get a chance to know him as a father, a businessman, and just a friend, he was a very special person. So, with our interview with him, although it was a short interview, it was really just kind of to humanize him and show that he's a regular dude. And one thing that really stuck with me through that interview is before we actually interviewed him, we were in his office, and he was just really adamant about, MB, these next 20 years, man, forget the last 20 years. And I'm like, bro, you're a 5-time champ. You're Kobe. What you mean forget the last, 20 years? He's just like, nah, this next 20 years in business is like, watch. And I believed him. He had a fun. He was winning Oscars and Emmys, and he had his hands in so many different things in the creative and content space that I had no doubt that, his work ethic that made him one of the greatest players of all time in basketball would have definitely did the same thing in business.
And Matt, you have a book, All the Smoke, that just came out. Matt, talk about like what was the process like to even do this? Like, why did you want to create a book like this?
First of all, it was an honor to have a coffee table book. First, as what Soldier Boy said, we were the first. The first podcast to do a coffee table book. Shout out our partners, Simon and Schuster, and really just kind of wanted to be able to capture what we've been able to capture. We've been able to capture some of the greatest interviews and greatest talent across the board. And it's not just sports; it's entertainment, it's music, and to really have something to kind of remember. Obviously, you can go back in our archives and see whoever you want to see, but when it's been able to put in a book, and it's a coffee table book, man, I was really impressed with this thing. So we launched it, and it was really just to kind of have a something to remember, what we've accomplished and what we've been able to do, and the fact that we were the first podcast to ever have a hard copy coffee table book. Man, we took a lot of pride in that.
Athletes versus Cancer, I know, was very near and dear to your heart. You probably don't remember this, but I used to work for Hennessy, and so I sponsored the bowling event that you had. I think it was Lucky Strike.
Yep.
And I was there through LaToya Jackson, and it was a great time. What are you doing with Athletes versus Cancer? What's the next step in evolution of that?
I want to revamp that because I stopped doing that at when COVID hit. The year before was our last, but I teamed up with Snoop, and we were doing football games and doing all kinds of fun stuff. I did golf tournaments, and it was great. And at the end, we were doing anything related to cancer. We were helping people pay bills, pay for surgery, people who got behind on stuff. It was just kind of really lending a hand. We had done health clinics and free screening for inner city people. So my mom lost her battle to cancer within 26 days of being diagnosed, and it broke my heart. So once I got my head together, I wanted to start Athletes versus Cancer and really just try to give back to the cancer community. It's been on a hiatus, man. Shit, we're going on 5 years now, but eventually I do want to revamp it and have a new mission and a new goal. So as it sits right now, it's kind of dormant, but I will revamp that soon.
I got one last question I'm gonna ask, but just one. So Matt, one of the toughest experiences of my life was navigating co-parenting. In and out of court, fighting for an equitable amount of responsibility and time with my son. I was young and broke, so I didn't have a lawyer when I was going through it. But for you, what's one thing that co-parenting has taught you about yourself, and what do you wish you knew at the beginning stages that you now know?
Choose your partner wisely is what co-parenting taught me. I was blessed and fortunate enough to have some money and was able to win full custody of my twins when I retired. But when I tell you I had to pay millions of dollars in lawyer fees for that to happen, which was crazy. You know what I mean? So like I said, if you don't have money, it's first of all, it's not set up for us to be a part of this situation. No matter what, and I'm not knocking my ex or any women out there because every situation is different, but it's not set for real dads to be able to really be able to do your thing in this space. So I've been very fortunate to be able to be a very present dad. As I told you guys earlier, I retired from the NBA because I wanted to be a more of a hands-on dad. So co-parenting has been tough, and my has been very well documented. My journey of co-parenting with my ex-wife for the twins, but the twins just turned 16. Gloria and I are finally on. I don't know if we're on the same page, but at least we're in the same book now, and that's all that matters. And obviously, the situation with Derek being their stepdad, and he and I squashed it. I'm an '80s baby, and it used to take the whole neighborhood to raise kids, and I feel like that's the same situation now. It takes a whole village to raise them, and I have a lot of confidence in Gloria and Derek to do their part, and I know they have a lot of confidence in me to do my part. But co-parenting is a mother, man, because too often feelings get involved, and once you've moved on from your ex, it's not about y'all no more. It's only about what's best for the kids, and often you see women use kids as bait to get money or antagonize the dad and downplay the dad's ability and him wanting to be a dad. So obviously this could be a whole show in itself, but it's a nasty situation, and I really take my hat off to anyone who's figured it out. I mean, again, my twins just turned 16 a couple of weeks ago, and we're just starting to figure it out, and we've been separated since the twins were 5 or 6, so it's took us almost 10 years to kind of get in the same book at least. But again, I think we've raised 2 great young men who will be not only great athletes but productive citizens, in society, and to me, that's the goal.
Nice, man. I got full custody of my son, but what a journey it has been, brother.
Ain't easy,
oh
man.
My God. But yo, listen, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for your words, your wisdom. You have this unique ability of being incredibly poised, but incredibly real, which at times in the media is tricky.
That's the weed, man. Blame that on the weed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt, for coming on the show. We don't have to tell you all to go check out his podcast, All the Smoke. I'm sure y'all are already watching it and listen to it, but also go and pick up his new book, All the Smoke, All the Stars, All the Stories, No Apologies. That is out right now. And don't forget to drop a comment below and let us know who you would like to see next on our show.